OK, well, joining me now to give his views on the Irish financial sector and the risks for other banks is Ralph Silva, Director and Analyst at Silva Research Network. Thanks very much for joining us again today. Just to pick up on Manus's point, this does throw light and a bit of concern about the stress test, not just in Ireland, but elsewhere, right?
Well, I can understand that, but the truth is that the stress tests were done at a very low capital adequacy. But now we only measure the banks based on the Basel III capital adequacy, which is significantly higher. And when you consider the Basel III capital, then the Irish banks would have failed. In fact, more than half of the banks would have failed the stress test. So it's a whole new paradigm.
Now, Ireland is in a very precarious situation at the moment. It does appear that the Irish Prime Minister, they've all set out their stall by saying that corporation tax is off limits. They're not really in a position to do that, are they?
They certainly are not. They're beggars in this particular case. They're getting a gift from the European Union to make sure that they keep going, and they're going to have to make concessions on that. But from a banking perspective, the money that was put into the bank just a few months ago was just a down payment. In fact, my estimate is between here and the implementation of Basel III, which is in a few years, they're going to need an additional 100 billion euros. Now, yes, some of that's going to come in profits, but at least 80 billion is going to have to come from other sources. And if the Irish government can't actually support them, then the banking industry is in quite some dire straits.
There's obviously a lot of people in Ireland right now saying that the government perhaps should have guaranteed the domestic deposits, but allowed particularly Anglo-Irish and maybe some of the other ones to sink or swim. When we look back now at the situation that Ireland's in at the moment, would that have been a smarter move?
Probably would have been a smarter move, but not to let one of them go down, but to force a consolidation like we did in the United Kingdom with Lloyd's. Maybe if we brought those two together, they'd be in a better position. And quite frankly, between here and the implementation of Basel III, the likelihood is that they will have to bring those two organizations together to make sure it's a viable
unfortunately for Ireland, if this is going to have to happen, it would have been better had it happened earlier, right?
Much better. They probably wouldn't have had the need for as much money as they do now if they had in fact done that a few years back.
How competitive are these banks going to be in the future? Who would use these banks now through choice? And
this is the real problem. Deposits, especially for consumers, are not at risk. There's no risk whatsoever. But from a business perspective, there's just no way you're going to get a preferential price because an HSBC or BNP Paribas will more easily be able to provide better pricing. So I see a lot of new business going away from the Irish banks to the foreign banks that are operating in Ireland. And that's not really great for the Irish banks or the Irish economy.
Now, if you were somebody who currently has either as particularly a foreign company who's got corporate investment banking in Irish banks, would you be concerned right now?
I would, in fact, be concerned. Now, not too many companies have 100% within the Irish bank, so that's a positive thing. But quite frankly, if the government protects the banks, which they will protect the consumers, not the businesses. They will let some of the businesses go under and not get their money back, and that's a real concern. So most of the businesses that I know are putting only small amounts just for cash management in Ireland, and the rest are going into foreign banks.
And of course that's a cycle that doesn't help the Irish banks, does it? Because their capital ratios are going down because
that's
of that.
Right. And the future of Irish banks, at least in the next 5 years, is retail banking, not corporate or investment banking. They simply can't compete in that area, but they can compete and do relatively well in retail banking, and that's where their focus should be.
And just before you go, George Osborne has come out quite forcibly in support of the Irish banking sector. That's something that he needs to do because of exposure here in the UK, right?
Well, there's a very, very thin border between Irish and British banks. They're in each other's country. We have been in Ireland for quite some time, and I think we need to protect the Irish banking industry because that's protecting ourselves.
Well, Silva, as ever, thank you very much indeed for your insights this morning.